Early in 2006, the first Harper minority government was elected. And one of the first things that they did, they convened a meeting, high-level meeting in Edmonton at the Hotel Macdonald downtown. There was the vice president of Shell and the vice president of Canadian Natural, vice president of and CEO of Suncor and that kind of thing. And so I remember them going around the table and in one way or another, they all said, you can be useful to us by making it easier for us to access the temporary foreign worker program. Up until the mid-2000s, the temporary foreign worker program had been sort of a sleepy corner of the federal bureaucracy, had been used to bring in relatively small groups of usually highly specialized workers.
There are many multinational corporations that move people through the programs, and they'll come to Canada for 2 years and then, transfer to their U.S. office. So all the people that came were highly skilled workers. People with assured jobs, people who did not need any kind of protection. So what happened by 2002, though, we had a real problem. We had a booming economy, a need for more workers, and a totally dysfunctional immigration system. And so they were saying, we need people. So the response by the federal government in 2002 was to take the temporary foreign worker program we have and totally shift it.
In the free trade agreements, everything in there supposedly regulated, but obviously there is not much regulation, just favoring the big corporations. But the migration of workers, it has never been put into the agreement. It's all been left outside, right?
Nobody sat down and thought about, what is this going to do? Have we got a program in place that protects people who are coming with very tenuous rights?
In 2006, there was a lawyers company that came into Mexico, and they published an ad on the newspaper requiring from people to come here to work. And they organized a meeting in the Sheraton Hotel in Mexico City. Many people attend that conference, probably around close than 500. This lawyer shows a presentation on PowerPoint showing us pictures about houses, the landscapes here in Alberta. And he told, well, when you start working in Edmonton and in other small places, you will receive the better wages that you can imagine, better than in Mexico. We are going to pay for the housing, we are going to pay for your round-trip ticket, and also the special benefit, after 2 years working, you can get the permanent resident status. So please guys, do your best, and we are going to select the best candidates to take them to Canada. And then they finally took probably around 200 candidates. And when we received this notice that we were selected, they said, okay, you only have 4 days more, because at the end of the week, we are flying to Canada.
Now, most foreign workers come from underdeveloped countries, Latin America, Philippines, India. The problem is that the work permit says you are to work for this employer in this particular job in this location. And the fact that it ties the worker to a particular employer is the reason why we have such exploitation.
This work permit said that we are only allowed to work in this specific location, and as soon as that we done 2 years of contract, we absolutely must be out of Canada. I remember that after clear the customs, there were probably around more than 50 owners, operators of this restaurant, the fast food restaurants, and these employers, after 2 hours, they took us to our place of work. We were 16 people from Mexico that this employer took us to Lloydminster. Yeah, I remember that night that I came here to Canada was snowing. And also was my first time that I saw the snow. My employer was surprised that this hiring process was really fast, and actually he wasn't prepared to receive like these 16 guys in the small town. At the beginning, he provided us a room in a hotel. This guy, I think he bought a large house with more than 10 rooms, and he moved all of us to that place. So imagine we were living 16 people in only one house, and actually probably only 7 people they have their own room, and then the other guys need to share the rooms. Even, for example, I remember that in the master room there were living 5 guys. And also when we moved to this big house, our employer told us that we need to pay for the lodging in the hotel. So in the first paycheck, he discounted this amount that he spent in the hotel, and it was really expensive for us. So almost in the first check, we didn't receive nothing because we need to pay for the hotel. I was paying $450 a month. Everybody was paying the same amount. Even doesn't matter if they were living 5 guys in this one big room, and was automatically discounted from our paycheck.
None of these jobs are temporary. The whole thing is a fiction, right? To just bring in people without rights. These jobs in the meatpacking plant, in Tim Hortons, in the corporate offices, or engineers in the field, those are all permanent jobs.
This is fast food restaurant, where they sell hamburgers and fries. When we came at the first time at this restaurant, they have a serious problem with shortage of staff. I remember that I saw only working probably no more than 7 people in that day. Canadians. Actually, I remember that I saw a little kid, probably he was 8 years old, or no more than 10. He was working in the buns. We started with probably 40 hours per week, and then next week 44, and then the third week I remember that my shift was probably 50 hours. After 3 months, I used to work over 60 hours per week. My friends that were working in the US were asking him, okay, we are able to do that, but what about the overtime? And he said, guys, absolutely, I can give you more hours, but I can't pay you overtime. So if you want to work more than 44 hours per week, I always pay you $10. So that's it. And everybody was concerned about that. Even my friends, they thought that this absolutely couldn't happen in here. But, most of my friends, I was talking with them, and they have economic problems in Mexico. One of my friends owed many money to one credit card, and he said, I know that is totally wrong, but I need the money.
I talked to a foreign worker who was a counter clerk, and they had asked their employer, aren't I supposed to be paid overtime? His employer said to him, oh no, our overtime laws don't apply to temporary foreign workers. So I don't have to pay you overtime according to the law. And just, it's just appalling.
I really felt how bad felt my friend that needs to send money to Mexico, because, he has a family in Mexico, children and wife, and he really owed many money. And I remember that sometimes in the night he was even crying because he said, yeah, I would like to do some about my situation, but I can't. I cannot quit this job because I need to send the money to my wife, to my kids, and I need to pay my credit card. I cannot do nothing. And I remember at the end, this guy almost used to live in the restaurant. He was working probably 70 hours per week or more. He was just go to the house to sleep 3 hours or 4 and then go back. So he was living absolutely in the restaurant.
We have probably over 100,000 undocumented workers in Alberta because people come here to immigrate. They have nothing to go home to. There are no jobs back home. Plus, if they go back home, they probably still owe the recruiter money back home. So they can't go home to that. So they stay and they end up working underground.
They are creating an unknown class of workers here in Canada. At this moment, most of my friends that were working in Lloydminster, I can totally tell the government that they are working here are illegals, most of them.
I remember one young man telling us the accident that he has. I guess they were cutting some pipes and the electrical saw somehow went wrong, whatever, but it ended up cutting his skull. He has, I don't know how many stitches, he say, all the way to his eyes and alongside his ear. He showed us at that time, it was a few weeks after we met him, right? But the very next day he was at work.
We started receiving calls in our office from temporary foreign workers who'd been taken advantage of. By 2007, the list of occupations under which employers can bring workers into the country under the temporary foreign worker program had expanded from about 20 occupations to more than 170 here in Alberta. It started first with primarily the construction sector, who were at the time engaged in major expansion projects related to the oil sands, led by private sector non-union construction companies like Ledcor, who were having a hard time manning those projects because a lot of the trained and skilled tradespeople in the province actually were working for unionized companies. So they were asking the federal government to help them meet this need by opening the floodgates on the temporary foreign worker program, which is exactly what the federal government did. And that allowed Ledcor to bid for contracts which they would not have been able to win. The existing Canadian group of tradespeople were starting to feel increasingly threatened because not only were they seeing more foreign faces on work sites, they were seeing these foreign faces working for companies which were winning contracts away from the unionized firms.
First of all, the concept of temporary foreign workers, were seen like, knee-jerk reaction by the workers. Some of the union people come in here and they take over. People who were waiting for full-time jobs, they couldn't do it because they have cheap labor, right, without benefit.
I remember having conversations with members of our executive council about the need to get out in front of this issue. We didn't want this to become a debate about white versus brown or Canadian versus foreign, when in fact it really should be a question about politics and policy.
Personally, I wanted to get down to it is people having a deeper discussion in terms of why this happened. Why is it that temporary foreign workers come in here? Is it because workers, they like to leave their family behind? They like to come here, in the case of Canada, to suffer these, harsh winters? Why is it? So quite often we don't do that kind of analysis, And why is it happen? Why governments and companies, are so easily, promoting and accepting this type of program? Because it's to their benefit.
We actually wrote up what we very consciously described as a progressive policy on the temporary foreign worker program. And basically what it says is that wherever workers are being exploited, it is the obligation of the labor movement, individually in our affiliates, but collectively through the Federation of Labour, to come to their aid. And I remember going to our executive council with a proposal to establish a special position at the Federation of Labour called the Temporary Foreign Worker Advocate. They agreed. We approached Yessie. She agreed that she would do the work. And then there was just like this tsunami. Within the first month, I think we got contacted like 1,000 cases. And Yessie ended up opening about 150 files within the first month.
A worker is a worker is a worker, and it doesn't matter what country they come from or the color of their skin or anything else.
I am carpenter in El Salvador. The problem in my country is the rich have more power. People working in El Salvador a monthly get it $115 as the base, $115 American. People I needed get it 2 jobs. Many children is not go to school because the parents I don't have enough money for pay the school. And actually, you see children steal stuff because I don't have money, I don't have food.
The end of 2003, early 2004, all email The Quebec Pork Processing and Slaughter Company, their human resource manager sent myself an email about the use of temporary foreign workers. At that point in time, I'd never heard of the program, had no understanding, and went through that. So started to do some research, and what we did is we negotiated a letter of understanding that was enforceable by the collective agreement. These workers walked in and got the same rates of pay as any Canadian or anybody else that they hired.
My first interviews in all email, I got it in April 2008, and I started working in the May 21, 2008 in all email.
For new workers, we had City of Red Deer maps, and we had our English as a second language instructor that did the orientation.
This union helped everybody coming from El Salvador, or doesn't matter the country is, because when you come in here, you don't come in directly the company. You come in here because the union actually bring teachers for teaching all the people about the job and about the rules in this country.
Specifically, we have our health and safety people that deal with health and safety inside the packing house. And whether it's Filipinos, El Salvadorian, we cover off, have stewards, and if we don't have stewards or union reps, we've got access to people who speak the different languages. We required the employer to contract and provide housing that fell within guidelines that we negotiated, that all opened the door and helped them familiarize themselves and feel it at home. And, they still dealt with the loneliness and still dealt with the missing their families, but they knew that there was something here for them and somebody on their side.
It's difficult because actually one of my bad experience when I come in here is this year. My grandma passed away, and I don't have the money for say I want to go to El Salvador because it's in coma for 5 days in the hospital. So I never see my grandma again, and well, now it's dead.
Whether it's somebody from El Salvador coming to Alberta or somebody from Newfoundland that's flying out to work at Fort McMurray, those family issues get ripped apart, and the fabric breaks down. And with that fabric breaking down, that causes all sorts of problems within society.
The big problem right now in my country is about the gangster coming from the US. This guy now decide getting money free from the families is called renta. And people call the family and say, I need $500 monthly, or somebody that your family die. Actually, this kind of case I can see here in all email when some Salvadorians they have to send some money for this gangster because I already called here and say, you know what, I know you in the Canada, you had to send me $500 a monthly, or some that your family die. I have 3 friends that already have this kind of problem. And the gangster tried to get all the children's, especially girl. Almost 3 weeks ago, in my country found 4 bodies. The girls 16, 13, 14, and 13. And the 4, I don't have the head.
In the fall of 2007, we released our first report from the Temporary Foreign Worker Advocate. It became a flashpoint, right? It was reported widely, not just across Alberta, but across the country. We talked about and enumerated all the abuses. And then we also listed 21 specific recommendations. The first one was that we should just scrap this program altogether, and if we need these people, we should be bringing them as immigrants as opposed to disposable workers.
These people are no different than the people that immigrated to Canada in the last 100, 200 years. They want an opportunity, they want a job to go to work, they want to contribute to society, they want to build their life here in Canada in a place that's better than where they came from, and that's all they want to do.
I think it was about 2008, the government said if you worked here for 2 years as a skilled worker, you could apply for permanent residency under what is now called the Canadian Experience Class.
The oil patch, tough work, but a dream job to some workers hoping to find a better life in Canada. Recruiting and retaining skilled workers like these can sometimes be hard for employers. To enrich the talent base, Calgary attracts oil and gas workers from around the world. They fill short-term gaps when industry requirements cannot be met by Canadians. Some of these temporary foreign workers have the skills Canada needs over the long term and may want to apply to stay here permanently. Citizenship and Immigration Canada has designed a program for this purpose, the Canadian Experience Class. Temporary foreign workers can apply to immigrate with 2 years of Canadian employment in a wide range of technical, professional, managerial, or trade fields.
So, there is now an avenue for skilled workers to come as temporary foreign workers and become permanent residents. So if you look at it in that way, what we've done is contract, who gets to pick the temporary foreign workers who are coming here? It's not the government, it's the corporations in this country. So I really think that this program has become a form of contracting out our immigration system. We had last year over 60,000 foreign workers. We had either 4,500 or 5,000 slots for the provincial nominee program. And out of those slots, only about half of them are for low-skilled workers. Talk about setting up exploitation. I mean, it's just, if you're a fast food outlet, you can sponsor one counter attendant a year for provincial nominee status. Gee, what do you suppose happens?
They actually told us only if we had a good performance here. But this good performance that they were talking about is like probably to work more than 50 hours per week and never receive your benefits that they promise you in Mexico. This is a good performance for them. So and if you can pass this test, absolutely you can be permanent resident. You know, it's like crazy.
Everyone that Olymel hires or Cargill hires or Maple Leaf hires, every temporary foreign worker must be put forward as a candidate. Of the 600 and some temporary foreign workers that have come through into our plant population at Olymel, more than 75% of them got status or in the program to get status.
When you accept in the program, you have a few months for bringing your family here. And part of the rule is you have to continue working for support your family. I want to see all my family and my children, because now I imagine my children is so tall.
One of the recommendations was for the provincial government to establish their own office specifically for temporary foreign workers to investigate employers who use temporary foreign workers. So then they now have two offices, one in Edmonton, one in Calgary. They're understaffed, but they're there, and they wouldn't have been there if we hadn't put the government's feet to the fire on the issue.
Our experience is that the tap has virtually shut off. Two of our employers haven't had a new temporary foreign worker, one of them for over 2 years and the other one for over a year. There's select employers that have successfully lobbied to keep or increase access to temporary foreign workers, and those industries are industries that have low, if no, unionization rates. If you look at the hotel, restaurant, fast food industry, they will continue to be able to abuse temporary foreign workers with the blessing of this government probably forever.
What we did with the Temporary Foreign Worker Program is a case study in how the labor movement can and should not only get out in front of big social issues, but help frame those issues in a way that resonates with ordinary people and forces the policymakers to take notice.
This is a global issue of poverty and the race to the bottom.
They don't come here to compete. I don't think they come with that mentality. They come with the mentality that I'm gonna make better for my family like everybody else, right? So therefore, I think that's the challenge for us, for labor here, to not only to embrace them, but also to understand what the hell is going on deep down. How is this system, how is this neoliberal, policies affecting here in Canada as well, right?
So if we globalize production, why are we so surprised when we start talking about globalization of the workforce as well? You send goods over to this country, you send them back. You send workers over to that country, you send them back. Except you don't take into account human rights and the needs of people to have permanent residency, to have rights to, civil liberties, those kinds of things. And people are not commodities to be moved around in the global market. And yet that's what this program does.